So first of all, many thanks for having me this evening. I will briefly look and try to comply with the 5 minutes I have been allocated at the situation in Gaza, as I've been asked to do through the lens of international criminal law. But before looking at the current hostilities under international criminal law, I think it's crucial, also from a legal perspective, to briefly focus on the context. In other words, from a legal perspective, hostilities and context cannot be addressed separately. Also, to put an end to the rhetoric that we generally hear in mainstream, but unfortunately also today, of both sides involved in the equal commission of serious violation of international law. And specifically, without for a matter of time looking at the situation in the West Bank, the situation in Gaza, if we start from the context, before the 7th of October 2023, is characterized by an already ongoing existing Israeli blockade put in place now more than 16 years ago, which has deprived the Gaza residents of the Strip, so Gaza residents of any freedom of movement, a territory in which before the 7th of October 2023, around 2 million of people, two-thirds of them belonging to Palestinian refugee family from 1948, the so-called Nakba in Palestine, living in 365 square meters, which made Gaza one of the most, of course, populated place in the world, so highest population density in the world. The serious consequences of the blockade on the living conditions and fundamental rights of Gaza residents have been subject of a number of reports and complaints by Palestinian, international, and Israeli human rights organizations, which agreed again before the 7th of October in designating the situation in Gaza as a real humanitarian catastrophe. And before the beginning of this war, according to different UN bodies, the situation in Gaza was already deplorable, unsustainable, and totally unacceptable in the 21st century. The Secretary General on different occasions pointed out that it was the civilian population that paid the consequences of this policy, unjustly affected and subjected to severe hardship for acts committed by third parties. And for this, on different occasions, he requested the total removal of the blockade against Gaza, which represents, using his words, a form of segregation and collective punishment of the Palestinian population in Gaza. Palestinian, Israeli, and international organizations have provided a detailed legal analysis, and they reached the conclusion that this context, also in the Gaza Strip, amounts to apartheid, which is a crime against humanity under international law. Of course, the impact of this blockade has also been compounded by a number of military offenses that Israel has conducted against the Strip since 2008-2009, so Castle, as someone was mentioning before. These major military offenses have claimed a shocking number of civilian lives, including hundreds of children, and left the population deeply traumatized. Again, just to be clear, I'm talking of a situation before the 7th of October. That's why I thought it's important to place emphasis on the context. In this context, briefly described, in which the Gaza Strip is still, according to many international organizations, under occupation, it's very long. Unfortunately, so far, the list of serious violations of international law put in place since the 7th of October. It's likely that Hamas attacks may amount to war crimes, as was mentioned before, but also appears to be enough evidence also for the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court to start an investigation in relation to the alleged war crimes committed by the Israeli authorities in Gaza. This could really take time. I'll try to make a brief summary. I'm referring to intentional attacks against civilians and civilian objects, disproportionate attacks. The total siege declared by the Israeli authorities at the beginning of the war may amount not only to a collective punishment, but also to a war crime, the war crime of intentionally using starvation of civilians as a method of warfare. And we have seen the effects of this total siege also in relation not to the healthcare system, where even babies in incubators have died because of the deprivation of essential goods like fuel, electricity, water, and food. In addition, the evacuation order imposed by the Israeli authorities on Gaza civilians, moving more than 1 million of people from the north to the south in a context in which there is no safe place in Gaza, may amount not only to a war crime, but also to a crime against humanity or forcible transfer of or deportation when the civilian population in Gaza moves out of the border. Entering into the Egyptian territory, so passing the Rafah border. Like hundreds of experts in international law, genocide scholars, I also agree that there is enough evidence for the prosecutor to start an investigation, and Ralph was mentioning this before, in relation to the ongoing commission of the crime of genocide. I'm saying this on the basis of the mass killings of civilians in Gaza, of people in Gaza. I'm saying this on the basis of the fact that Israel has caused seriously bodily or mental harm to members of the Palestinian group as a national group, in particular in relation to the bombardment of residential areas, which has generated an unimaginable mental harm also to the population. But I'm also referring to the fact that Israel has deliberately inflicted on Palestinians in Gaza conditions of life calculated to bring about the physical destruction, such as depriving, I was saying before, the population of essential goods, destroying the entire healthcare system, forced displacement, and we could go on. This conduct apparently have been put in place with a clear intent, which is the main, the difference between here crimes against humanity and genocide is it's this special intent to destroy, and which is also generally the most difficult element to prove. And in this regard, we have an incredibly long list of statements by Israeli political and military leaders, for instance, showing a clear genocidal intent, creating a severe humanitarian, I quote, a severe humanitarian crisis in Gaza is a necessary means to achieve the goal. We are fighting human animals, the defense minister Garland. I have ordered a complete siege of the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Netanyahu, there will be no electricity, no water, there will be only destruction. You wanted hell, you will get hell. The president of Israel said that there are no civilians in Gaza. Everyone, we must put an end to this rhetoric of civilians. Everyone is responsible there. So this shows, in my view, as I said, but in the views of some international organization, 100 of the international law experts, a clear genocidal intent. So I believe that one of the reasons behind the commission of this international violation of international that may amount to international crimes, there is also the climate of impunity which has been enjoyed, that the Israeli authorities have enjoyed so far, which because they have never been held accountable for the most serious violation of international law. And unfortunately, in this regard, also the work of the International Criminal Court has been characterized by double standards and selectivity, particularly if we compare to other situations in which the court has been very prompt in reacting to this alleged commission of international crimes, like situation in Ukraine, as someone was mentioning before. The ICC, it's clear that so far, more than 14 years since Palestine started its formal engagement with the International Criminal Court, has failed to deal with international crimes in this context. There has never been a request of arrest warrant so far. There has never been a summons to appear. In other words, there has never been a case before the ICC. The court in 2021, the former prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, opened an official investigation. And the facts that we have been assisting since 7 October would fall within jurisdiction of International Criminal Court. The problem is that since the new prosecutor has been appointed, the British barrister Karim Khan, he has been very reluctant in putting in place any effective investigation in this situation, as demonstrated by a number of facts, including that for 2022, he allocated no budget to this situation, and for 2023, Palestine was the situation, the active investigation receiving the lowest budget among all the active investigation before the ICC. I'm going to conclude saying, sorry if it was slightly long, but saying that unfortunately, as I said before, the approach of the court in Palestine has been characterized by double standard and selectivity. And I believe that the prosecutor's reluctance to investigate some of the most documented international violations in Palestine has contributed to undermine the legitimacy and credibility of the International Criminal Court. At the same time, such prolonged denial of justice constitutes an encouragement for the perpetrators to commit new crimes and sends the dangerous message that the most powerful human rights abusers can avoid any investigation and prosecution. I hope, in conclusion, that after he also spoke at the Rafah border, that now he will adopt a different approach. He will put in place an effective investigation and realize, most importantly, that for the Palestinian victims in this situation, there is no alternative to International Criminal Court to receive justice. Palestine is unable to prosecute any responsible of international crimes, while Israeli authorities, as widely documented by UN Independent Commission of Inquiries, is unwilling, and maybe the military justice system also unable to prosecute any Israeli military or political leaders for the commission of the most serious international crimes. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much.